So by now we should be used to fact-free Tedx talks because we don't need no stinking facts, do we? We don't need to cite any sources. We can just spew a bunch of research and say, see, women's are oppressed. Well, this Joanne lady here in this TEDx talk, of course, women are oppressed and victims and all this other crap. But the amount of gish-galloping we have going on here, endless supplies of facts with no, sources to back them up. It's just, this one study said something here. Okay, where's the study? Oh, it's not referenced. Oh, gosh, I'm so shocked. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing here, but let's go through a little bit. This is Joanne Lipman at a TEDx talk in Pennsylvania, I guess.
So perhaps it's no surprise we've been using the wrong strategies for decades, which explains why, for example, women still earn just 80 cents on the dollar.
Of course, she's comparing white women to white men. It's interesting. You never do hear why. You never hear Asian women compared to white women. Asian women, on average, earn $120 more a week than white women. Wouldn't that make no. Asians are minorities. Well, what about Asian men compared to white women? Almost $450 more per week. Do you hear anything about that compared to the under 200 difference between white men and white women? No, Joanne, because that wouldn't support your narrative. Being, the patriarchy and all privilege and white men. But Asian men? No. Let's not talk about that inconvenient fact. Because if you did use that, it would be far worse of a wage gap if you used Asian men, but let's not.
And for black women, that's 61 cents. For Latinas, that's 53 cents.
No mention of Asians. I guess they're the only minority group we can't talk about, huh?
And meanwhile, even though women earn more than half of all college degrees,
60% actually, but go on.
We make up only 5% of CEOs of major companies.
Isn't that crazy, though? Out of the 5% of Fortune 500, let's 10%, so there's 25 female CEOs of the Fortune 500. How many men out of the population of the United States make up the rest? 475 out of 165 million. But let's not talk about that.
They found that 1 in 4 Americans believes we will literally invent time travel before women run half of Fortune 500 companies. So what's going on here?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out none of this workplace bias actually starts there. It starts way earlier at home in infancy.
Probably starts in the womb, as the father is beating the mother after we all, men are always beating their wives up. And so that's probably where it starts, right? Before they're even born.
And it's because of this unconscious bias that all of us have that's buried so deeply inside of us, we don't even realize that it exists.
You know what's even better? You can't measure it. Just trust us, it exists because, even we don't know we have it.
So I'm the mother of a daughter and a son.
Great.
The research tells us that mothers of infants routinely overestimate the crawling ability of their baby sons, but underestimate the crawling ability of their baby daughters.
So it's the mothers that are having a problem here. So they need to be woke about the crawling ability of their children. Oh, no. No. You can't blame women. It's got to be the evil father somehow.
Then when these kids turn 2, parents who type into Google, "Is my child a genius?"
Oh, my God.
They're more than twice as likely to type that in about a boy 2-year-old as a girl. Then these kids get into school. Their teachers are biased. In one experiment, students were given 2 sets of math tests.
Now we're talking about math here, guys. Or for you overseas friends, maths, right? So what do you think of when you think of a math test? Okay, 2 times 7 is 14. 3 plus 9 is 12. 2 squared is 4. 3 cubed is 9 or whatever. 9. 26. I failed. 27. There is an answer that is correct in a math quiz, and the rest of the answers are incorrect. Okay? So what difference would it possibly make if little Johnny's name is on the test or little Janie's name is on the test? The answers are right or they're not. But of course, this study, uncited, finds bias. Isn't that right, Joanne?
One graded anonymously, one graded with names on top. When graded anonymously, the girls outscored the boys.
Interesting. If they were anonymous, how did that? Oh.
When graded with names on top, the boys suddenly outscored the girls.
Now, are we talking about multiplication tables, division stuff? Are we talking about calculus? Are we talking about word problems? Are we talking differential equations? Are we talking about that, or are we talking just simple, regular old math? There is a correct answer, and there is an incorrect answer, and it doesn't matter what you have between your legs. If the answer is wrong, you're going to get dinged for it. I do not understand, and I tried to find this study, and I found a little bit of it, but there's probably a paywall in the way of finding out the whole thing, if you know what I mean. I wonder if she's leaving out a few details with this particular statistic.
In math. Now, this pattern repeats all the way up until college, where a female college student needs an A average to be seen as the equal of a male college student with a B average.
Is it the same course of study? Or are you most likely comparing an engineering student with a history major? Just saying. And who's doing the judgment? Isn't that a rather subjective thing? By the way, how do you objectively measure that? I'm just curious.
That means by the time these now grown kids, now young men and women, enter the workforce, they have already internalized that women are worth less. And when we value women less, we also value their contributions less.
Okay, sure, whatever.
So, for example, researchers have found that women are interrupted 3 times more frequently than men.
Now, I'm just going to throw out my own anecdotal evidence here, because the rest of this thing is without evidence, so why not some anecdotes? What I have noticed is that some women, when asked a question or whatever, what's your take on this particular thing, they throw a lot of extra words in. When you're in a business situation, time equals money. And so if I want an answer about when is this report going to be due, or what's the manufacturing look like on this particular, I want to know the freaking answer. I don't want to hear about all the fluff and all the blah, 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 but get to the point. And it's not just women who do this. Men do this as well. But I've noticed it seems women tend to throw out a little more word vomit than necessary to get the point across. Maybe that's why. I don't know that. It's still rude, don't get me wrong. But if you're in a situation where time is money, I don't want to hear a bunch of shit I don't need to hear. Give me the answer. It's just that simple.
Northwestern University found that even female Supreme Court justices are interrupted 3 times more frequently than male justices.
Do they talk more than the male justices? Because I know Clarence Thomas, Justice Thomas, is famous for not saying anything. Therefore, he's not interrupted, is he? Do you see my point?
And then when we make up less than a third of a room, our voices are literally not heard. When I speak with groups, I very often ask for a show of hands among the women.
Do you ask the men in the room if they have the same issue? You don't. Because you might find out something that you don't want to know, that men are also affected by the same things. And we can't have that, because your narrative then would not be perpetuated as victims always.
Who have experienced the following scenario. You say something in a meeting, and nobody seems to hear it.
Yeah, happens to me all the time. So what? Oh, but you don't care. You don't care that it happens to men. Is that right, Joanne? It's just the females. If you cared about what happens to men, you'd ask the men, wouldn't you? But you don't, and we know why.
It's like crickets, right? And then 2 minutes later, some guy repeats exactly what you just said, and everybody turns to him and they're like, hey, Bob, great idea you had, Bob.
Do you think this doesn't happen to men as well? Do you honestly believe that?
Right? Usually 100% of hands go up, including mine.
I wonder how many men's hands. Oh, you didn't ask the men. Okay.
Because what we're experiencing is a respect gap that researchers have documented between men and women.
Yeah, and men experience the same thing. I can't go on too long, guys. It's just, just bullshit after bullshit on this one. And I'll link it below, of course. But she eventually gets around to talking about Iceland as one of the most gender equal countries in the world. And isn't that good for them? Isn't that fantastic that Iceland is just great for women and men? Well, if you look at the labor market in Iceland, this is the most gender equal country in the world. If you look through and you see, industry, mining, manufacturing, fishing, vastly the majority is men, male. Building stuff, construction, fishing, farming, etc., etc. Oddly, when we get down into the category of education, men are vastly outnumbered by females, by 4 or 5 times in education, 5 times in human health and social work activities. It's about equal in selling cars and repairing things, according to this chart. So the point is, this is the most gender equal, fair, whatever country in the friggin' world, yet women are still choosing education, social services, etc. They are not choosing construction. They are not choosing fishing. They are not choosing manufacturing. They're choosing the same jobs that allegedly the oppressed women in the United States also tend to choose on a large scale. And yet, men, of course, are the issue. Links below. Happy Independence Day. James Maxwell, thank you for listening.